This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Welcome back to Black and Privileged in America podcast. Power, love, and money conversations relevant to Black thriving, supported by Infinite Resources. I'm your host, Abena Sankofa. This episode, we will talk to a woman running for U.S. Congress. But first, catch Black and Privileged in America podcast on the Amplified DSM network, on the Amplified DSM YouTube channel, all social media platforms, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Melissa Vine, single mother of 4 boys, businesswoman, and nonprofit director. She announced her candidacy for the U.S. House of Representatives, 3rd District, representing Iowa. And today, we are going to learn more about her. Melissa Vine, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Abena. I'm really honored to be in this space.
Well, I'm honored. I'm glad you're here because I think we have a lot to talk about. You're running for Congress. You want to go to Washington, D.C. to represent us. I think that's a huge deal.
Yes. I'm really excited at the idea of bringing the stories of Iowans to D.C. With my background, the needs of Iowans have been really up close and personal to me, and I look forward to that opportunity. For
sure. And I want to talk about your background. But before I do that, I want to talk about right now. Our political landscape it's polarizing. Mm-hmm. The issues are all over the place. You're a Democrat in a red state. Mm-hmm. We used to be purple. I don't know what happened. I think President Obama happened. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, it feels like, Iowa was a state that flipped and decided to support President Obama first term. Uh-huh. And after that, people were mad. I don't know why people were mad. Maybe it's because he's Black. I don't know. But people were very upset. And as a result of that, we saw this shift back to normal for Iowa. And the shift back to normal was red.
Yeah. Well, and we had really poor voter turnout in the last cycle. We had over 90,000 registered Democrats who didn't come out to vote. So
that's a lot of people. 90,000 registered Democrats. So what is the issue with Democrats not turning out to vote? I mean, we need them. We need everyone really to participate. Yeah. I think that's part of preserving and saving democracy. That's the narrative we're talking about in our society right now. So what is the reason why you think people aren't turning out to vote?
Well, I think it's easy to become complacent when you have political fatigue, right? And the extremism that's happening, the degree to which money and power are consolidating at the top and making it harder for regular people to run for office and have a good chance if they're not connected to that money and power. The laws that are being made, the turning back of time, the direction that we're headed. I think people look at all of this and they're like, this is such a mess. I don't even know how to vote in this environment. It feels overwhelming. Where do I even start?
Yeah, and it's tough for a lot of people. I've talked to populations of younger voters, people who have maybe registered to vote in the last couple of years, and they're paying attention, like in ways that I haven't seen before. I haven't seen young people this engaged in a long time. Yeah. And they're paying attention to the national stuff, with the presidential contenders, and they're paying attention to people running for Congress. Okay. And they are not happy. What is it that you could say to them? What are your words to speak to younger voters and to galvanize them to participate in the election process?
Yes, I think you are right on track with that. Younger people are paying attention. And as many woes that there are around social media, it is educating young people on issues that historically teens and young adults have not paid a lot of attention to. So I will give it props for that. What I think is important is looking at reducing the impact of power and money in politics. So, for example, we have 268 millionaires in Congress and 37 moms.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. 268 millionaires right now in Congress.
And wow. 37 moms of minors.
So, are the 37 moms millionaires too? I'm curious about that.
Like, yeah, what's the crossover? Yeah.
Is there some overlap?
Perhaps a little. I wouldn't be adding to that overlap. We'll just say that. But there's nothing wrong with having millionaires in Congress, but there's overrepresentation. And is that group paying attention to the price of eggs, the access to childcare, and, you know, the everyday issues that affect most families may not be something that's top of mind for them. And I think we need to have more people in Congress that represent the people of our country.
Okay, so the people of our country. So let's talk about that. The demographics of the United States is rapidly changing. We know that by 2040, we will be what they call majority minority. I hate that phrase because I feel like the word minority implies that there is a group of people that are lesser than others. And I disagree with that. So I think majority people of color, you know, the majority, global majority is more appropriate.
Yes.
So in terms of that, with people in public office, elected office, being representative of the demographics, the changing landscape, you know, you are a white woman. Why would black voters, for instance, think that, or why would black voters believe that you be a good representative of them?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question. Sure. Well, what I want to do in this space is come into this space and know I'm not always going to get it right, but I will continue to show up and listen and learn. I mean, I have stepped in it more times than I would like to admit, but I will keep showing up and keep trying to help me get it right? Because it's so important that your voices are represented in DC, in Congress, where laws are being made, because that's how we change these systems, is to get into this government space. And in my career, you know, currently right now at the Beacon, we've been working on, you know, decriminalizing race. We know that 5% of Iowa is black, but 25% of Iowa's prisons are black.
Yep, 26.4. Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's not because black people are committing more crimes. They're more likely to be arrested, charged, and have longer sentences, and be less likely to be released. And so there's a racial disparity happening within our criminal justice system, which, you know, as you know, has such a disproportionate impact on families and communities of color. It's not just the individual who's being mistreated, but that ripple effect on entire communities. And so that's what I've been actively working on the last 4 years at the Beacon is how do we find racial justice in that space here in this district? And I want to take that same skill set into Congress.
I love that. And speaking of the Beacon, can you tell about what the Beacon is and how you got involved in that organization as the executive director?
Yeah, so I came in July of 2020, and we work with women who are coming out of incarceration. They're either facing homelessness or the threat of homelessness. Some of them are coming directly from substance use treatment or fleeing domestic violence. And I was, you know, working with these women. We're providing housing, and then a case manager to give them wraparound supports like mental health counseling, substance use recovery, financial literacy coaching, career development, socio-emotional learning, culturally specific resources and supports. And I'm getting to know these women, and I'm like, these women are amazing. They're smart, they're kind, they're so resourceful, and so like such hard workers. And I couldn't sleep at night going, why are we locking these women up just because they have a substance use disorder and or a mental illness and can't afford anything but jail? Which, of course, then makes them more poor, you know, the way that our system works. And so I thought we got to intercept earlier in this process and provide support instead of punishment. And so I'm calling and I'm emailing and I'm trying to get this system changed. I'm a systems thinker. And how do we intercept and change the outcome for these women and their families and their futures? And I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was frustrated. And so, like, it was kind of just this idea, like, well, this is just the way it is. But there are 9 million incarcerated people in the world, and 2 million of them are in the United States. We have over 20% of the world's incarcerated people.
Whoa, okay, I want to pause there because that is striking.
Uh-huh.
And it seems to me that the reason why could be that incarceration is big business.
Oh, it sure is.
Can you expound on that a little bit? Yeah.
Well, you think about if you are running a prison industrial complex, right? Like you've got some company is paying for or is benefiting from the purchase of all of the clothing, the healthcare, the food products provided inside, the building, like actually building the properties, maintaining the properties. There's big money. Even when you look outside, obviously private prisons, people are aware of why that's, exploitive. But even within the public system, lots of big companies benefit from the prison system. And so as this system grows and we're building more and more of these across the country, and these big companies are getting bigger and bigger, and they're lining the pockets of politicians that will keep this prison system going. And so when you come up against that and try to change it, again, there's that consolidated power and money at the top. And it's just this idea, well, this is just the way it is. Well, I've never been okay with this is just the way it is. And so I took the LSAT sort of as a last minute, kind of a Hail Mary. And thankfully it went well. And so Drake Law School offered me a full ride.
Awesome. Come through, Drake. I'm a Bulldog too. So yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually just graduated on Saturday.
Congratulations. Look at this. We got a graduate in the house. Class of 24.
That's right. That's right. So yeah. And honestly, getting that law degree, I don't have interest in practicing law. I mean, it's a bit like chewing cardboard to me, But I was interested in changing the systems that are harming people, and having this law degree gave me access to the spaces and a seat at the table, especially as a woman, having those credentials. And we were able to launch Polk County's first and only pretrial jail diversion last year.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you. So women can now stay in the community as an alternative to incarceration. And so then we've doubled our staff. We added a second building, and we were able to provide housing for up to 66 women. And so, yeah, so they have a future now. They are not going to become further traumatized, and then their children separated from mom. We're changing systems and changing families and their futures.
Okay, so you said you've been there since 2021?
July 2020.
July 2020. Since then, how many women have come through your organization, through the Beacon, that you've helped? I mean, it
would be somewhere between 300 and 400.
So approximately 400 women have come through and been transformed by your work. Yeah. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, wow.
It's a joy. I love the systems piece, but then also you stop and look at these individual women whose lives are completely changed, and to get the feedback from them about, this is the first time in my life I've been treated with dignity, that I've had a family, that I've felt like I belong, that I have something to give to the world. The transformation in their lives is just astounding. And we've also made it a priority, because you can't do good care for your clients unless you do that first for your staff. So really investing in staff. I've doubled their compensation since I started. We have unlimited PTO for salaried staff. You can bring your kids, your pets, your grandkids, and half of our staff have been incarcerated before.
Oh, so they know firsthand the types of issues and challenges that the women are facing once they hit the door there.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's incredible. I think I'm glad to know that. Like, I didn't know the Beacon did all that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is great.
Well, we want to do nonprofit differently. Like, sort of the antiquated model of nonprofit is everyone's overworked and underpaid and begging for money.
And underappreciated, for sure.
Yes, and it's super stressful. I'm like, you can't. I come from business. You can't build a business that way. Why do we expect nonprofit workers to live in those kinds of conditions? It's just not. And then you're trying to help clients who are facing some of the most vulnerable times of their lives, and you're giving them a staff that's not cared for. That's not going to work. And so we've overhauled policies and procedures and practices and all of the things to, create an environment where the staff feel supported, and then the clients feel that. You can tell when you walk into the Beacon, this is a supportive environment, and that's what our clients need to heal.
I love it. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. Wow. And I went to a, what was it called? A seminar. It's a Black agriculture series recently that's happening across our state. And so I stopped in and checked out a couple of those lectures. And one thing that I discovered in the lectures was that out of the 14 carceral institutions in the state of Iowa, 12 of them have farming operations that the inmates work. And so I don't know 12 of the 14, the two that are excluded would be Fort Madison and Mount Pleasant. So that would mean the Mitchellville Women's Facility is operating a farm on which some inmates are working and not being compensated fairly. Yes. Have you heard about that? Have you come into contact with any women that may have been employed there, or, well, employed, I use loosely, right. But yeah, I mean, so what is your take on that?
So I've not spoken specifically with women who were participating in that program, but certainly, most of the women have been engaged in work while they were in prison. And after talking to a lot of them, it sounds like the average pay is around 50 cents an hour. And so it's essentially modern day slavery.
Indeed it is.
Which the 13th Amendment makes space for. It says, abolishes slavery, except, you can have forced labor when someone is incarcerated. And so, we've just transitioned to this different system that's more socially acceptable to some people anyway, and are taking advantage of these people. I mean, you think if you make $4 a day and you have to buy like your deodorant, feminine products, I mean,
and the feminine products, I believe, should be like free anyway.
Right.
Like, why are any of us paying for it? But particularly female inmates should not have to pay for feminine hygiene products. Mm-hmm. I said it. You heard it here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Make that part of your platform. I mean, goodness, because it's a problem. It's a problem. So you're a mom.
Yeah.
You have 4 boys.
I do.
Okay. Let me just say one thing. I have 1 son. 2 bonus sons, 9 grandsons.
Wow.
Okay. So I know that being a boy mom can be a peculiar thing. So how are you doing? Like, how are you raising 4 boys? That's smelly feet.
I was going to say it's lots of air freshener.
And then the hugs are the best, the times when they come to you and they want to confide in mom.
Yeah.
Those are special moments. So how is being a boy mom?
Yeah, honestly, before I had kids, I wanted all daughters. Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
But now that I'm a single mom, I'm really grateful. They are so thoughtful and they look out for me. And, when I got into politics and they started seeing some of the, people are just terrible online and people were making comments as they do online. And I was showing them to the boys at dinner and they got real like, Mom, who do we talk? What do we need to do? Right? They were upset. But then once they saw me laugh and say, hey, you know what? There's going to be a lot of this. And, we're just going to have to laugh about it. I mean, every once in a while a comment will, poke a little bit too much. But for the most part, if we can laugh at it. And once they saw me laugh, then they're like, okay, Mom's okay. We can laugh too. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've been out helping, delivering signs and knocking doors and getting signatures. I mean, they have been there every step of the way. In fact, when I was asked to run, I sat them down and I told them, okay, here are all of the negative aspects to running for office and being in office, right? Because there are a lot of them and it impacts the whole family. And so their opinion was a really high factor in this decision. And they sat down with me and they're really good friends with each other. So they confer with one another and they said, Mom, if you don't do this, we're going to be mad at you.
Oh. They feel like you're the right woman for the job.
I guess.
Wow. They believe in you.
They do.
That says something.
They're amazing.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
Now they're 19, 17, 16, and 13.
I mean, God bless your heart.
Oh, right? So I've got, next year I'll have 2 at Iowa State and 2 at Roosevelt High School in the Des Moines Public Schools. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Public schools. What do you think about that? All this stuff going on. Ooh. Let me just tell you. Private schools are happening. They're a thing here in Iowa. It's like popular. It's like the next rave after, Iowa Nice, which we know that's fake. So, I mean, what is your take on public-private schooling?
Obviously, I'm a big fan of public school. My kids are in them. And when we incentivize private school over public school, it hurts rural Iowa. It hurts communities of color. It hurts families in poverty. It only benefits people with access to transportation and availability and money and to access those private schools.
Yeah, because that tuition is hiked up 25%, I read recently.
And how do you get your kid to school?
Yeah.
If you rely on your child taking the bus or walking to school, or you're in rural Iowa, you're not close to a private school, essentially it's a subsidy for folks with money to access more resources, which they already have access to.
So education in general is a polarizing topic in our country right now. Yeah. There are rules and laws and policies against teaching accurate history. Mm-hmm. In Iowa, we have the rule that says no divisive topics concerning gender and race. Ugh. So what are you going to do if you go win the primary on June 4th? That's coming up. I mean, gosh,
it is.
If you make it through the primary and you defeat Zach Nuun, what will you do in Washington to ensure that education is safeguarded in the right ways for our children?
Yeah, I mean, what we see happening right now is a patchwork across our country, right? And there's a pocket of very conservative governors who are taking on this playbook that's, coming from, Trump and his crew to privatize education and get kids in a space where they're only hearing a very narrow perspective on our history, which primes them to be a part of this party that controls the narrative. And one of the most beautiful things about public education is that it fosters a sense of curiosity. If I give you all of these different perspectives and ideas and expose you to all these things, then you get to become curious. And I will never forget sitting on a rock at Sylvan Lake with my son shortly after my divorce. And he said, Mom, you believe these things and Dad believes these things. And I don't know, how do I know what I'm supposed to believe? And I said, you're actually in the best place because you are going to learn how to be a critical thinker. And what happens when we privatize education and make that essentially going to become one of the only options to getting education is that we're taking away from children their capacity to be curious and to explore the world and learn about different perspectives. And when we ban books and we ban topics, we're teaching kids, we're shaping them to be narrow-minded thinkers. The truth should not be scary.
Sometimes it is. I mean, if we sit down and talk about the truth around the founding of the United States, it's terrifying.
But if you're somebody who, if you're someone who is very closed-minded, has a very narrow set of beliefs, and you feel threatened by truth, you feel threatened by books or topics that discuss our country's history, and the ways that we have exploited and mistreated people throughout history, if that scares you, then there's some exploring that needs to be done in your own heart.
Agreed. Okay.
Why does that feel like a threat to you for kids to learn about slavery and the Trail of Tears? And, why does that feel threatening? Yeah.
Okay, you're on to something, sister. I love it. Okay. Education is going to be good with you. I love that. War. We are in the middle of and by we, I mean the United States government is refereeing right now between Israel and Gaza. And really, it's supposed to be Hamas, but Gaza is suffering the consequences of this conflict. So I know that right now, a lot of our congressmen and women are supportive of Israel's stance as far as defending itself and responding to the horrific attack that happened on October 7th last year. But many people are now saying, hey, Israel, what you doing? You going too far. Yeah. You kind of tripping a little bit. Like what? Stay on point, stay on script. And Israel is doing what it's doing. What are your thoughts on that particular conflict?
Yeah, that's hard to even watch. I mean, all the way back to October and the images that you see online and the capacity of humans to cause destruction in this way is just heartbreaking. But yeah, I mean, Israel does have a right to defend itself, and also, the killing of multitudes of innocent civilians and children. There's not really a justification for that either. And so finding a way that we can have a ceasefire, return of hostages, but most importantly, just a massive amount of humanitarian aid. I mean, for a lot of families, it's too late. But for who's left, what can we do to salvage what's left and restore a sense of culture and community among people who have been decimated?
Is the United States, in your opinion, still a leading world power, a hegemon? Like, do you feel that the United States' position as a hegemon is threatened at all?
I think we started to lose a lot of respect under Trump, the Trump administration. Well, but even before that,
yeah,
I liken the United States to like the oldest sibling in a family who sometimes doesn't realize the power that they have or the way that people look up to them. And then, you know, I'm saying this as an oldest sibling myself. And then I became an adult and realized, oh, you know, I was not maybe, you know, really listening to my younger siblings when we were growing up, or making sure that their voices were heard or their needs were met. Like, and I didn't even realize the power that I had, or as a white woman, right, and the power that I have. There's these times when you realize, oh, I had more power than I realized I had. And I think the United States is getting to this place where, especially this younger generation, is calling out and saying, hey, we need to understand the position that we're in and the way that people have looked up to us. And we need to behave in a way that we are acting as a role model and not just trying to tell everybody, you know, this is how you should do your government based on what our culture is and what makes sense for us.
Yeah, it feels more like we are a global, I don't want to say bully, but we could be considered a global bully rather than a government that really uses diplomacy in the right ways.
Yes. And I think we could use a big dose of humility. There are lots of issues in the United States that other countries are not struggling with. Things like healthcare and gun violence and suicide rates. And you look at other countries they've got this mostly together. Can we be humble enough to say, hey, let's look at this country. What are they doing that's working for them? Because what we're doing is not working.
Right.
And not just assume that we are the best at everything. Again, that older sibling mentality. Because
I'm looking at this, our transportation and our infrastructure right now in this country is crumbling. And then you go look at other countries and they have like pretty shiny things. And I'm like, are we the best? I don't know. But anyway, I love our country, the United States. Yay. All right. So enough of that. Okay. So I want to talk about reproductive rights and the right to terminate a pregnancy. That's one of your top issues for your campaign. And it's one of the top issues on the Democratic platform in general. And so my question to you is, it seems to me that on the Republican side, reproductive rights and the right to terminate a pregnancy is not top of mind at all.
Right.
And this is a red state, Iowa. So why is that top of your ticket? Why is that on the top for you?
So 60% of Iowans believe that abortion should be legal in most or all cases. So our representatives currently are not in line with the beliefs of Iowans. But I want to say that this abortion issue is so much bigger than abortion. Regardless of where how they personally feel about the topic of abortion, we need to think about what are the implications when we ban abortion. So already, Iowa's losing physicians faster than any state in our country. We have the lowest per capita of OBGYNs in our state. So we only have one residency program remaining in Iowa for OBGYNs. As we are losing doctors, we're losing OBGYNs, thinking about the impact of healthcare on our entire state. So what happens when a woman is diagnosed with ovarian cancer or uterine cancer? Like, if there are not enough OBGYNs, right? If someone has to go to the ER, they have a heart attack, but we're losing ER doctors because there's this threat looming. At the end of June, the Iowa Supreme Court's going to decide. There's this threat looming that abortion will be banned in this state. Now, if you're a new graduate of medical school and you're deciding where to go after you graduate, are you going to practice in a state that could criminalize you for doing what you believe is best practice? I talk with my friends who are OBGYNs, and they said, if you're in an ER and a woman comes to the ER and she's bleeding profusely, how much blood would she have to lose before you're legally allowed to complete an abortion?
Yeah.
50%? 60%? At what point can you do that? right? And if you're in a state that criminalizes abortion, you could have to do jail time just for using breast practice in medicine. And so as we think about our state losing so many doctors, and especially the impact in rural Iowa, where they're already really struggling to get access to healthcare, and especially OBGYNs, we think about the impact on Black maternal health. We already have Black women dying in childbirth at 3 times the rate of white women. What happens if we have even less OBGYNs and even less options and access to care? And so the cascading impact of banning abortion, there's also a lot of statistics around. So, for example, last year, our infant mortality rate went up by 30%. And this is the first time in 20 years it's gone up. It went up by 30%. A pregnant woman in a state that restricts abortion is 75% more likely to be the victim of homicide. Because we see women becoming pregnant, if they're in domestic violence, they may choose to stay because they economically, as a pregnant woman, cannot afford to get out. And so we see the homicide rate going up for pregnant and postpartum women. And so the impact of the death and negative impact of banning abortion goes so much further than just the act of abortion itself. And so that's why I am supportive of safe and legal access to abortion. Let a woman and her family and her doctor, that is such a private decision and so often a life or death situation. And not always even just death, but the threat of poverty even. I mean, if in states that restrict abortion, if a woman cannot get access to an abortion and she would like one, needs one, poverty rate goes up by 4.
That's an interesting statistic. And also, in some analysis would suggest that the abortion argument is more about jurisdiction and states' rights than the actual issue itself. What do you think?
Oh,
you got this law degree. I'm interested in what you think.
The danger with that is that you have states like ours with people in power that do not listen to their constituents and make decisions based on trying to play the political game and get political clout on a national scale. And that's their primary goal, and not representing and caring for the people. Interesting.
Immigration. That's also a part of your platform. You say that our current immigration system is broken and that you'll work with both sides to fix it. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, well, there was a bipartisan bill. I mean, they worked on it for months, passed the Senate, went to the House. Trump doesn't want immigration fixed. This is how he's going to run his campaign on, right? Is this fear tactic? And so,
immigration, I think he thinks immigration is only the southern border. When immigration is more than that, honey, it is so much more than that. Yes. But anyway, yes, continue.
So Speaker Mike Johnson never brought it to the floor. Like, here it is. It's ready. We've got some solutions. They're not perfect, but there's some solutions. And as with a lot of things, I think of the 2 pillars of empathy and responsibility.
Yeah.
And so the empathy for families who are looking to survive, they're looking for to feed their children, a place to live. We have employers in the United States that cannot find workers. A lot of them are on farms, in factories, labor jobs. They need more workers. We have people who are saying, we want to come and work for you. This solves 2 problems at once. But in order to do that, we need a lot more judges to be able to get these immigration cases through our system. Right now, it can take 5 to 7 years. What does someone do for those 5 to 7 years before they can get through the system? We also need ways to detect, is someone bringing something across the border that is not helpful to our culture, fentanyl, something like that, right? And so there are ways to filter out the bad actors while still making space for families that could contribute to our economy and fill some jobs that we need to fill. This feels like a very practical solution, but again, our politics have become so polarized that sometimes we shy away from practical solutions and instead people just shout back and forth. So,
should there be a federal law to legalize marijuana, cannabis?
Yes.
Oh, really? I didn't know you were going to say yes, for real. I'm like, what is she going to say? You say yes. Why?
It's been used to criminalize. It disproportionately impacts people of color. I don't.
It just makes sense to me. Yeah.
Like, yeah. Why is it? It's used for medicinal values for so many folks. It does not tend to lead to violent or erratic behavior that's concerning to society. That's not really my business, someone's medical needs or, yeah. I
like that. And I think, too, the use of hemp itself could be used to make paper. It could be used to make other things. Mm-hmm. It could create jobs. It could be an answer to some of the ailments of our economy. So,
well, and all that's happening right now is we're not collecting taxes on it. Like, people are still buying and selling it, even here in Iowa, and we're just missing out on tax dollars because they're doing, when they do it underground. So
yeah, and I certainly don't like the fact that Black people are disproportionately in contact with law enforcement and the criminal legal system because of a cannabis offense. Yep. When there is like one big organization that can sell it and make money and do like, what is that? That doesn't make sense to me.
If someone in Iowa gets pulled over and they have marijuana in their vehicle, if they are Black, they're 8 times more likely to be arrested than if they're white. And that reason alone right there.
Yeah. Guns. We have a gun problem in our country. And I am personally not supportive of taking guns away from people who are responsible owners. Mm-hmm. That's not my point, but there is an issue here. Mm-hmm. What is the gun issue and how would you address it in DC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 10 years ago, we had some of the best gun laws in the country here in Iowa. And over the past 10 years, that has changed. And our gun violence rate has gone up by, I want to say
1 billion %.
100 and don't quote me on this, but I believe it's over 150% has gone up. And we have also had 3 school shootings. I was in Perry shortly after that one. And so it clearly needs to be addressed, and at a federal level too, I think, because this is happening across the country. Like you said, this doesn't have to be a polarizing issue. If we're not saying let's take all the guns away, and the other side is not saying, there has to be somewhere in the middle. If you can think of someone in your life that should not have access to a gun, how do we put laws in place that make it possible for people to not have access to guns if they are a danger to themselves or others, if they have a history of domestic violence, if they don't have training? There are so many simple things that we could do that still allow people to have access to guns for the purposes that they need them, but also keep them out of the hands of people that would be dangerous.
Where did you come from? Like, what is your origin story? I'm just curious because I feel like you are a whirlwind of energy and messaging for positivity for people. And that's rare in these parts.
Thank you.
Truly. So, I mean, I read that you worked in a grocery store.
I did.
Tell me about that. Like, were you the checkout person?
I was.
Because now, we've got these machines that are messing up people's change and stuff.
So yeah, about 10 years ago, I got out of an abusive marriage. And overnight, I went from being a wealthy small business owner to having $0 to my name. And my boys were 9 and under at the time. I had no job, no resume. And so I started checking groceries for $8.50 an hour. And I went through a paradigm shift. It really changed my perspective on the world because I believed historically that if you just, follow this path and do these things, life will be okay for you. And all of a sudden I wasn't able to stay on that path anymore. My family didn't look the way it was supposed to look. My bank account didn't look the way it was supposed to look. And I wasn't. Welcome
to the hood, Melissa. Welcome to the hood. Yes. I mean, I'm not rooting for that situation. I'm just saying I think there are a lot of people who could relate to that story. I think that resonates.
Yeah. Yeah. But I will acknowledge, too, that I had privilege in that scenario because I could walk into a bank. I still had nice clothes from the past. I still had a vehicle. as a white woman walking into a bank with a financial plan and projections to start a business or to get a loan, whatever, what I needed, I knew how to navigate those spaces, and I had advantages coming into that not everybody has. I think of the women at the Beacon, maybe wouldn't know how to navigate those spaces or be able to, right? And so it's not that I made better choices than them. I just had better choices in front of me. And so I went and got my master's degree in mental health counseling. But again, I already had a bachelor's. I had a good credit score, right? Like I had all these things lined up for me to make it possible for me to get out of poverty more quickly than most people might. And so, yeah, I began working as a therapist. I did that for a few years. I really liked helping people, but I knew about myself, I need to do this on a systems level rather than helping people one by one. And we need people at every level to change culture. But for me personally, I'm wired to do systems change work. And so that's when I became the executive director at the Beacon. So
interesting. And your name is a phenomenon to me because for me, my name is special. It's a name that I chose for myself to kind of ground me in my purpose. And it centered my trajectory. It focused me a little bit. No, a lot of it, actually. It focused me. And so I'm interested in your name. When I read the name Melissa Vine, I don't think I know anybody named Vine. So can you share about your name? I think nomenclature is so important, naming practices, because whether as a Black woman who is the descendant of enslaved Africans, I know that people tend to aspire to live up to a name. And so for my family line, living up to a name that wasn't ours was totally out of the cards. Like, what is that? So that's why I changed my name so that I could select my purpose. I can choose my path and live up to that voluntarily with my full self, with full force and full will. So tell me about Melissa Vine. Where did that come from?
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Abena. So when after I went through the divorce and a lot of times women will go back to their maiden name when they go through divorce. And I thought, I didn't really have any, desire to do that necessarily. I didn't want to keep my married name. And so I thought, I'm becoming a new person here. I am completely changing my life and my story. And at that time I had started doing some speaking and I was looking at doing some writing. And I thought, I think it would be cool to start this new chapter with a name that I have chosen that's easy to spell, easy to pronounce.
Yeah, because I went from a Black name to a Blacker name, so you chose something easy.
Your name's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I literally Googled last names and just looked through. I think I was with my sister and friend that weekend on a little road trip and just started reading through names and saying, okay, which one fits, and we landed on Vine. So
Vine. Well, I think we will see you moving about and meandering the political landscape, as it were. And I look forward to watching your journey. And I hope that people are encouraged by your story, at the very least, encouraged to participate in the democratic process.
Yes, and that's so important. We cannot become complacent, especially at a time like this. We need to be talking to our friends and neighbors and families about paying at least enough attention that you can decide who to vote for. We've got a primary coming up on Tuesday, June 4th. I would certainly appreciate your vote in that. We're in Polk County, Dallas County, and then 19 more rural counties all the way down to the southern border. So we got a big district here. So
yeah, your work is cut out for you. Thank you, Melissa.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
As is my tradition here at Black and Privileged in America podcast, I always ask my guests to bring a book, share a book that you've either read or are reading that has moved you, challenged you, changed you. What did you bring today?
So I brought Brene Brown. I thought it was just me, but it isn't.
It isn't. Okay.
Making the Journey from What Will People Think to I Am Enough. And she does work on shame. She's a sociologist, and this book goes way back. This is one of the first books I read when I was starting to change as a person. But what it does is it gives you a process for sitting in your own shame. Those moments when you want to hide, you want to run. How do we sit in it and own hard truths about ourselves and the world around us and be able to accept that and assimilate them into our story and move forward empowered by that rather than trying to hide and run from the things that we don't want to believe about ourselves.
I mean, what a book. I think I always add the books that people suggest to my library, so my shelves are overflowing.
Somebody called them your emotional support books.
Oh yeah.
I was like, yes.
I've got my to be read stack and my emotional support stack for sure. So I don't know which one that'll be in, but yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And again, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. I think this has been completely amazing.
Oh, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the work that you do, Abena.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. To my listeners, I've learned a lot from Melissa Vine today, and I hope you have too. For more information, go to her website, which is, melissavine.com, and you will learn more about her campaign and the issues that she stands for. It's my hope that you participate in the process. I think we are at the point in our country's history and future that it is imperative that we all add our voices to the conversation. So participate, people, please. Subscribe, like, and share. Find Black and Privileged in America podcast on www.amplifydsm.com and my website, www.abenasankofa.com. Stay engaged, stay curious, keep striving, and thanks for listening. Until next time.